will be happy to do a tutorial on the use of the microphones. I don't know how to explain it. You want to explain them?
To turn them on, it is the third button. It's the one in the middle. It's got 3 curved lines with a little squiggly next to it. Turn that on, turn it off.
I think that's a face.
Pardon me?
It's a profile of a guy's face.
Okay. It's a squiggly line. So just hit that once to turn it on, hit it once to turn it off. The mute button is directly to the left of that. To mute, you have to hold it down. As soon as you let it go, it won't mute anymore.
And your light goes off. I get it. Okay. Thank you. I think we're all up to speed. Would you call a roll, please?
Ms. Carano. Mr. Kerrigan.
Here.
Mr. Curtis.
Here.
Mr. Dortch.
Here.
Mr. Finland.
Here.
Mr. Flynn.
Here.
Mr. Hall. Mr. Hawkins.
Here.
Mr. Humke.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan.
Here.
Ms. Weber. Ms. Zadra.
Thank you very much. Let the record show we have a quorum present. Charlotte, would you lead us in the pledge? Thank you very much. Approval of the agenda. Anyone wish to change the order of any items? There's a motion for approval, and we'll take that as a second from Ms. Carano. Second by Ms. Carano. Motion by Mr. Hall. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, would you call public comment? There is none. We will close initial public comment. Review and approval of the minutes of September 26, 2013. Any changes, deletions, additions?
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. That would take us to updates and reports. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very busy time of year for us, and it's evidence from the fact we had an all-employee meeting yesterday, and most of our sales team was not in town. So a lot of special events going on, a lot of sales trips, a lot of other activities that are keeping us on the road, but moving us forward on our accomplishment of our sales goals. I was back in Washington, D.C. just a couple weeks ago for the American Society of Associations Summit Awards dinner. This is a big event with a lot of the association executives from the D.C. area attending, and I went back and made sales calls with our national sales managers in D.C. in conjunction with that, and I have to say, it really was great to see the kind of profile that we have created for ourselves in recent times. On the sales calls, the comments were so similar from people about, I had no idea you had this. I had no idea that you were capable of accommodating a group this size. I had no idea you were such a great value. And so the messaging that we've been hitting over and over again through our marketing, through our sponsorships, and through our sales efforts really is starting to take hold. And when we went to this Summit Awards dinner, we had a table with 8 customers with us, and a lot of folks coming over to say hello, and lots of positive comments. And of course, we just finished that ASA Next Gen conference here that met at the Peppermill and at the Hyatt Lake Tahoe, and a lot of folks came over and said congratulations on such a successful first-year event out in Reno with the Next Gen conference. Just to, once again, a snapshot, but we are definitely making an impact on people, and for a destination that a couple of years ago wouldn't have anybody stopping by the table. It's great to see that we are on the radar map for so many organizations and so many key people in the industry that are going to help us get where we need to go. I'm also very pleased to announce, and we'll get into a little bit more detail later on, that Joe Kelly and Shelley Fine were able to secure Snafflebit futurity for 3 more years. And it was a hard-fought battle, and what I want to focus on here is how difficult it is. Getting business on merit is kind of a thing of the past. Getting business on aggressiveness and creativity is really the name of the game today. The state of Texas has a large fund for buying business, and in the case of Snafflebit, to try and get it to move from Reno to Fort Worth, they were offering $300,000 cash a year to the organization to make that change. That's hard to compete with when a state puts millions of dollars aside and says, use it as necessary to buy business. Fortunately, Joe and Shelley put together an offer that we felt was aggressive but realistic. And fortunately, there's a lot of history here with Snafflebit and the Reno-Sparks Livestock Event Center. They like our environment here. They like the history they have with our facilities and this event. And the combination of the changes we've made, the new signage out front, the new sound system, the ladies' restrooms, those were noted when Joe and I were talking to the executive director and some key board members the day before their board meeting. It was duly noted that we had made investments in the Livestock Event Center, and they appreciated it. So those dollars are getting us towards where we want to be and having these groups sign up again. But kudos to our team for overcoming $900,000 cash from Fort Worth and making it come back here. And they did approve us while they were here in town. They had a requirement that they have a second approval within, I believe, 2 weeks of that board meeting, and that was unanimous as well. So we're just executing the paperwork now, but that was a great win for our destination. Jennifer Cunningham and I have made the rounds to all of our major partner properties and have presented to them our 2014 co-op advertising proposal. And one of the things you'll be hearing from Ruth at EMC shortly is how the new research shows something very clearly to me, and I think it will to you as well, and that is when we spend marketing dollars in Northern California thinks about us, wants to come here, and has us top of mind. There's a direct correlation between the amount of dollars we spend in our #1 market and how we do on our surveys through research. And it's almost startling how much the correlation is. When we spent the absolute most money in August of 2012, were the highest numbers we'd ever achieved. This past summer, we were spending at a lower level, and those numbers were good, but not as good as they were back in 12. And in the intervening months where we were spending less, the numbers dropped down again. So total correlation on the charts between what we're spending and what people think about us in that market. And it's a competitive market. If you look at the dollars being spent, especially by other parts of California to market to Northern California, there's a lot of competition out there. And if you don't keep on shouting on a consistent level and at a loud enough voice, the numbers reflect that. So that's why we feel it's important to get our co-op campaign not up to the level necessarily we launched with, but still to a significant level of 1.4 million. And I'm pleased to say that as of today, we have 4 definite properties on board. We've got a couple we haven't yet to talk to. We only have 1 no. So very good response this year. The properties had an opportunity to spend about 3 hours with us, 2.5 hours with us beforehand with a representative from each hotel, talking about what they liked, what they like to see different. Got a lot of unanimous agreement on the direction to take, and as a result of that, as I say, 4 of our biggest properties have said, yes, count us in at $125,000 each. We have other properties that expressed interest that we're talking to, and then, as I say, 2 others we have yet to have our face-to-face conversations with. But I do anticipate us being able to launch a $1 million+ campaign starting next spring, and to get us back in the level I believe we need to be at in that #1 market in terms of telling them and reminding them about special events. One of the most interesting things to see from our research, too, is that as gaming continues to go down 1%, 2% year after year, attendance at museums, shopping, attending special event, all these are trending upwards. So the messaging we're putting out there that this is a 4-season destination resort with a lot of things to do is being reflected in what people tell us they do when they actually come to our destination. Not what they intend to do, but what they did when they came here and spent dollars. So research is a great thing, and I'm glad we're doing it on a consistent basis because it really allows us to track the effects of what we're saying and how we're saying it in the marketplace. Federal government shutdown has come and gone. A lot of negative impacts on a lot of things, not the least of which are government meetings and travel from international destinations. One of the things I did note that carries on is the incredible growth of the Chinese market. And this was brought home to bear I was on vacation with my family in the Northwest last week, and we were standing at Mount Rainier, and the park had just reopened as a result of the shutdown ending, and so we decided to, on our way home, to stop by instead of on our way up as we had originally intended, and had a wonderful day at the park. But as we were there, you looked around, Chinese families speaking Chinese, Indian families, a lot of international visitors there. But the Chinese, I think, were the biggest surprise. And not that they're coming to our country, but they made it to Mount Rainier National Park in Washington State. Not exactly an easy first visit for someone who may not have been to our country before. But I believe there's a lot of upside potential for us. Las Vegas has been active in the Chinese market for quite some time now, and rightfully so. There's good air access, and it's a big market that attracts 10 times the number of people we do here. That being said, I do believe that China is now following the path of other international markets. As they start out, they go to the obvious places, the New Yorks, the Los Angeleses, the Las Vegas, because those are the ones they're most familiar with, and those are the ones that are most likely to be offered by the tour companies. But after they've visited those destinations, they get more adventurous. They want to know what else there is. How do I get to the national parks? How do I get to places that have natural beauty, not just the high population centers? And as such, we are going to be stepping up in 2014 and playing more of a role with NCOT and with Las Vegas in participating in their marketing efforts in China. I don't want to go there before it makes sense, but it does make sense now. And if you look at the numbers, they're just staggering. 100,000 visitors from China coming to the United States every month now, which is up 35% from last year alone. And the doors are just opening up. $102 billion a year being spent by Chinese travelers on international travel. Staggering numbers. And if we get a tiny slice of that, it's still a great incremental business for us we're not currently enjoying. So when the powwow event was held in Vegas and a lot of the fam trips were done afterwards and folks came up here for the first time from wholesalers from all over the world, we had a reception for them at the Automobile Museum, and we got to talk to them. And they said, we had no idea there was something so beautiful and so different from Las Vegas, so close to that city. And they had left 110 degrees in Vegas and got here, and it was a beautiful day. And they saw the mountains, and they saw Lake Tahoe, and they had their eyes open. So there's incredible potential here, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us going forward, because as gaming continues to dwindle and the challenges of other destinations marketing heavily continue, if we can all tap into large numbers like this going forward, it provides a terrific solution to offset some of the losses from traditional markets. On a totally different note, we are starting to get quite a reputation now as a restaurant city, and we don't have the celebrity chefs that Las Vegas has, but what we have is great restaurants offering great value. And recently there was a website that voted us the #1 underappreciated culinary town in America. And as we all know, last year Compo kind of put us on the map when Esquire's Food Issue said they were one of the 20 best new restaurants in America. So maybe 5 years ago we didn't have to worry so much about food trends, but today I think as we're starting to gain in reputation in food and beverage, our resorts and our restaurants need to know what the leading edge is and what the trends are, so that we can not only be a great value and great quality, but also be up on what people are looking for and experiencing elsewhere. So I won't spend a lot of time on these, but Benchmark Hospitality did this poll of culinary experts and chefs and found out that chef crafted is a real trend. Everything from making their own jams and jelly, growing their own herbs. Really, people want things that are almost artistic in their presentation, and they expect the chef to be the director of that. So maybe it's show business, but it's something that is a very strong trend in the key markets. Celebrity protein, this quinoa, which I had never heard of before, gluten-free protein grain. This is a new trend, and people are trying to find ways to incorporate this in all courses and meals during the day. Parental controls, healthier kids' meals. I see this myself. I got one grown child, but 2 kids still at home, and when we go out and they look at the kids' menu, they're almost too old to get the kids' menu anymore, but you see a lot more fruit and a lot more healthy choices on the kids' menu than the traditional pizza slice and grilled cheese. And I think a lot of parents are driving this, and a lot of kids are getting used to it now, so that eventually they'll not always opt for the French fries and sometimes go for the carrot sticks instead. Everything's getting smoked. Smoked olive oil, smoked heavy cream, and as I noted, smoked cocktails, which sounds pretty disgusting to me, but I guess they're trying everything to come up with a new variation on some of the traditional elements of a meal. And then pedigree. Guests want to know the origin of food. Where was it grown? really more details than ever before about if it's salmon, is it raised on a farm, or is it naturally caught off the coast of Alaska? These are things that people are curious about, or at least many diners are curious about. And as the sophistication level rises and we have more potential to talk about our food and beverage here, hopefully our chefs will rise to the occasion and start being aware of these and get away from perhaps the meat and potatoes kind of reputation we have traditionally to a little bit more sophistication. Moody's Investor Services recently released a report on how non-traditional gaming destinations are really coming on strong, and it was quite interesting to see that Pennsylvania now is #1 in gaming revenues from a state perspective. $1.5 billion they rake in from a state that didn't have legalized gaming until relatively recently. But the population centers of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and the Poconos, you add that up, and they've got a really major gaming market and volume there now. It was also interesting to note that New Jersey, with Atlantic City, has 1% of their revenue coming from gaming, whereas Nevada has 25% of our revenue, which makes us a lot more susceptible to these changes. And as we all know, the online element really hasn't kicked in full force yet. So only observation on that, nothing really new other than the latest numbers, but a reminder that we are very fortunate to have our special events line up here, our natural beauty, our outdoor resources, and all the other great things that really make us a four-season destination resort to fall back on. If gaming went away entirely in a lot of destinations, they'd be out of business in every way possible. In Northern Nevada, we have a lot of things to sell besides gaming, and going forward, our research shows that's working, and as these numbers continue, it's the only strategy that makes sense for this destination to succeed. Congratulations to Pat Flynn for taking over as chairman of marketing and sales. We celebrated that by not having a meeting this past month, but we will have one in November, and we look forward to his leadership and continuing the great work that Beth Cooney has been undertaking in recent years. So we look forward to that very much. On the operations side, just a reflection on, I go on so many site tours and so many walkthroughs of our facilities with customers from all over the country, and it is so great to hear the positive feedback we get. I mean, Barrett-Jackson, you've heard me say it. Craig Jackson said we have the best facility they operate in anywhere in the country. We had a conference call with them this week, and they once again reiterated how terrific our team was and how terrific our facility was for their first year in Reno, Tahoe. We are working with them, by the way, on finding a way to have their ride and drive on our property. It was at the Atlantis this year, and because of the shape of the parking lot and the light poles and everything else they had going on over there, General Motors actually pulled out of it and left Ford by themselves, and so it's a real priority for them to find a new solution. And Joe and I have looked at the options, and we believe that our satellite lot C makes the most sense. There's a flat surface there in the center. We can still have peripheral or perimeter parking going on for Barrett-Jackson. We probably would lose about less than $10,000 in parking revenue that weekend. So I discussed with Barrett-Jackson that we need to have that offset by them, and they agreed. So they'll be visiting with us soon here in person to kind of walk it with us. But that would mean that the ride and drive for Ford and GM, the two biggest sponsors of Barrett-Jackson, would take place within earshot and eyeshot of the hall where the cars are being lined up for auction, and they like that proximity. And Ford and GM, they need to keep them happy, obviously, with the setup here. So great progress there. We talked about that World Honey Expo. The site inspection has come. We're having a follow-up visit with them. Looks very good to get a Honey Expo here that would be growing with us over the years. One of the gentlemen involved who came out here, he's going to return with his partner, but he was one of the founders of Safari Club, have a lot of credentials in the hunting world, and we think this would be a terrific show that would focus more on the North American market so that the international flight issues that shot us in the foot, no pun intended, with Safari Club really won't be an issue. If you're drawing heavily from the Midwest to the West Coast of the United States, people are going to drive here or fly here on direct flights, and we're going to find that I think that some of the issues that were so problematic with Safari Club at the end would not be an issue with this type of show. Also more concentrated on North American game. Would still have perhaps some international components, but he was very impressed with our facility. Walked through the convention center, said this is fantastic. We've had so many site inspections with associations recently coming here, seeing our convention center for the first time, and I've noted in the past how much I dislike multi-level convention centers, which is a majority of what we experience as we travel around the country and attend events. And it's great to hear the customers point that out themselves and say, I love the fact that it's all on one level. I love the fact that it's so intuitive to get around this convention center. That's a real problem. So many times they build a convention center and they want a certain number of square feet, and it's a relatively small footprint because land's expensive, and they end up making it up and down, and that's not the ideal setup for a convention center. So all this leads to the fact that coming up in just a couple of days, we've got the Trade Show News Network Top 50 Awards coming here. They'll be headquartered at the Peppermill. They'll have some events at our bowling stadium and our convention center. And what's especially great is this is not a large group. There'll be about 120 people here from all over the country, but it is leaders from some of the biggest and most successful trade shows in North America, most of whom have never been here. And the only reason they're coming here is because they're coming to get an award and to celebrate with each other their success of the past year. And in doing so, and John Linen, totally responsible for bringing this here. He did a great job of finding out how to make it happen and bringing them in, and we did a very creative thing with a sponsorship, and not only a sponsorship, but a scholarship program that he came up with, wherein not only this year when they're in Reno, but next year and the year after when they're elsewhere, there'll be a Reno scholarship presented on behalf of our organization. Very clever. So basically it's a way to get 100 people who matter here in our convention center seeing it, and hopefully if we get a handful of them to look at us for future events, it'll be well worth every dollar we're spending on it. So we bring big things here, we bring small things here, but the important thing is to bring the right people here. And with what we're doing with the ASAE and this Trade Show News Network, and we just had the Society of Government Meeting Planners here. They were over at the Grand Sierra. Once again, it was about 100 people, but it was 100 presidents of all the chapters all over North America and their leadership of the organization. So over time, these are very efficient ways to expose our marketplace to people who are influencers and really make a difference in telling other people they should check out our destination. On a less positive note, we continue to have major challenges with Levy Restaurants as our food and beverage provider in our facilities. And we are taking steps to improve the situation, but it is just staggering to me how with all of the warnings and the private meetings and discussions we've had about specific customer complaints and how to resolve them, we keep on having new groups come to town and experience similar decisions and problems. It's staggering to me. You'd think their corporate pride would be enough to have them bring some executives in here and get this situation straightened out. Now, any of you who have gone to an Aces ball game and ordered a hot dog know they don't do a very good job over there either. Sometimes they even run out of food during games. I understand they're interested in getting the UNR contract. Well, good luck with that based upon the job they're doing for both the Aces and our organization. But we will find a solution to this, and we'll find it sooner than later, and we'll update this board when we have a recommendation on what to do. But at a time when we have so many positive things happening in this market, to have a major national company fall so short so frequently with such lack of response, it really is amazing. So don't want to end on a bad note, but the good note is we will find a solution and make sure we deliver the kind of food service that's equal to everything else we deliver at this destination. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the President? Mr. Hall.
Chris, thank you very much for the report. I'm curious, the comment that you made about the direct relationship between expenditures in Northern California and the trade and business develops, or do you get the same kind of reaction or results if you're spending money in Southern California or the Northwest?
You know, that I would have to be guessing. I think this is a rare opportunity to see a direct cause and effect of marketing very clearly. There's an old saying in marketing that 50% of your marketing works. The question is which half. It's usually very difficult to prove that marketing generates business awareness and all the things you're trying to accommodate. But in all my years in the industry, this is the most direct cause and effect I've ever seen. So if we were to have the dollars to spend in Southern California, our #2 market, I believe it would be the same correlation. However, it would be a much bigger tab because of the size of that market down there. The Northwest, we could probably have a similar effect if we were to go to, say, Seattle or Portland and spend the kind of dollars we're spending in the Bay Area right now. I do believe we would see that that kind of correlation. We also have to give thanks for a very creative and very effective ad campaign, because you can spend money and not see results because your creative doesn't click with the people or you didn't choose the right media to deliver. I think what we did so well and continue to do so well there is a combination of billboards, magazine, radio, and online that gets people in a crossfire. If you live in the Bay Area and you're during our peak period, you will hear messages about Reno Tahoe, unless you are totally cut off from the world and never leave your house or apartment. And I think the fact that 47% more people went to our website during the peak of our campaign over the year before, that's a staggering number. When I tell that to other marketing people, they say that's the highest number I've ever heard. But the numbers don't lie. And our website continues to grow, driven in great part by the marketing dollars we spend in California. So I do believe that in a specific market, if you spend past a critical mass of marketing dollars, you will see a correlation between what people think about you and do and the dollars you're spending.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Mr. President, I have one, this area of the Chinese market. There's some fascinating ideas. Average expenditure by the tourist from China is, in this country, is $7,100, which is double what Americans spend
Right.
when they're abroad. That's fascinating. It's going to quadruple by 2017. Does the state of Nevada have a Chinese office?
Yes, the state does, and that was led by the LVCVA quite a few years ago, and NCOT has kind of ridden their tails. Ironically, the state goes along with Vegas, but our representatives over there, I have met with them at the Governor's Conference on Tourism, and they have very aggressively asked me to please consider the Rscva coming because they have a lot of interest in Reno and Sparks and Lake Tahoe. And I had a long conversation at last year's conference, and this year's conference comes up in December, and I'm confident we'll have that conversation again. But I did commit last year that we would go starting in 2014.
What would be the effort ultimately? Would we station a staffer at that office?
No, we have representatives that are paid to represent us over there who are native, speak the language, and know all the key players. So when we go over on a sales mission, they set up all the appointments and would take us and our representatives along with the LVCVA and NCOT to the accounts and introduce them. And then we would work with them through our sales team to put together programs that would go in their brochures and be sold to the public. So there's a delay. You have to start it to get the following season up and running. So if we start in 14, we probably would see the effects more in 15. But you have to start somewhere, and I think the volume is enough that even if we get a tiny sliver, it's still thousands and thousands of new visitors.
That sounds productive to use contractors. I know the state of Nevada experimented both on the economic development side as well as the tourism side with foreign offices, and they can turn into a political football or they can be, a positive effort.
If you find the right representative, you can do very well, and it's more cost effective. There are a lot of reps who have a lot of customers and don't give any individual customer as much attention as what they're probably paying for, so you can also do it wrong. But by all appearances, we have very good reps in China, and I've been impressed with them when I've talked to them.
Great. Anything else for the President's report? Is there a desire to move to accept the President's report?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second to accept. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. And now the results of the core market awareness study. Chris, were you going to tee that up?
Ruth is here once again. She's with us on a regular basis presenting these from EMC, and I will turn it over to her.
Good morning.
Oh, look, okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, hi, everybody. Good to see you all again. Today I'm here to go through the results of the Bay Area Awareness Survey. So I think it was last month, I was here talking about the visitor survey that we do, and this month I'm gonna take you through the results of the the Bay Area Awareness Survey. This is the survey that we've been doing now every 6 months. So this is a regular, twice yearly survey of the Bay Area market, so that we can really try to see, and now we've been doing this regularly, so we can really see some trend data that, because this is really the market where you're spending the most of your money, that we can kind of quantify the awareness, and you can really track to see, as you're spending your money, what is the awareness of the brand, what are the brand attributes, how are they changing over time, and and what are the opinions, and what is the interest in visiting. So we can actually see the changes as we're, so you can track that along with your spending.
And Ruth, excuse me, just for the board's benefit, as Ruth presents these numbers, remember that August of 12 was our peak spending, and that was $1.8 million spent that summer, starting in the spring into the early fall, marketing our What's Your Passion campaign. Then you'll see February, afterwards, February of the following year, we had very light spending at that point, almost nothing. And then you'll see August of 13, and August of 13, we had an Rscva only effort with $700,000 spent. So we're going from 1.8 million to 700,000 August 12 to August 13. So keep that in mind as you watch these numbers, and you'll see what I was referring to earlier, the correlation between big spending and moderate spending, and what our the opinions are of the destination in terms of what to do and how much they want to come here.
Right, and this is actually a key, because in sort of a perfect world, I'm sorry, yes. Okay, yes. In kind of a perfect world, maybe your spending is actually consistent, and what we're asking about is awareness. So this chart actually shows how you're spending in the market. Now, keep in mind, this is the co-op. Oh, okay. This is the combined this is the Rscva spending. So the individual properties, you may be spending money separately. There's also, of course, other issues that come up in the news potentially, but this is the combined spending in the market that's been happening. Just to go back a little bit, this is a survey that we do. It's a phone and web combined. We do about 1,000 interviews total in the combined 9-county Bay Area market. And we've been doing this, over time. So what we found here, and we'll take you through the numbers, is that the Reno's overall brand strength and the core attributes remain very positive in the Bay Area market. So overall, the Bay Area has a fairly positive opinion of the Reno brand. We're seeing a slight increase of respondents in the Bay Area saying that they're starting to travel more. As the economy gets better, people are starting to say they're traveling. But what we're also seeing is that it's very hard to penetrate this market. So even though the spending has gone up and down, those who are saying they're aware, they've heard something, really has not changed very much. Even when the highest level of spending, the awareness, saying I've seen or heard something recently about Reno, only goes up a couple of points and then goes down a couple of points. It's just very, very hard to penetrate such a busy market, and especially those saying when we say what is a getaway destination that first comes to mind, the percentage saying Reno has really kind of stayed constant over time, and it's just we can see how hard it is to change people's perceptions, and especially a lot of other destinations are advertising. And I can say, I live in the Bay Area, and it is constant advertising from other destinations. It's a very competitive market. The other thing is that we see that there were sort of upward trends in the 2012 correlating with the significant spending. We saw we did see increases in the percentage saying that they wanted to visit. We saw increases in kind of what we call the brand attributes, as I'll take you through, and that those have kind of all decreased a little bit and we're seeing kind of a downward trend, and we think it's correlated with that we're not spending as much in the market. These aren't again, the brand is still very positive. We're not saying, oh, this is a panic point, but we definitely see a correlation with spending. As you spend more, it seems to make a difference. When we spend less, we start to see the drop off. So again, this was just your spending to keep in mind. The first question, have you heard or read anything lately about Reno? You can see over time we now have 45% saying they've heard something, 10% saying they've heard a lot, 35% saying they've heard a little. That was down a little. You can see the numbers have not changed significantly. You can see how hard it is to penetrate the market. Even in August of 2012, when it was kind of the highest, it was at 46%, and the highest was 13% saying they'd heard a lot. And then it went down to 8% and then 10%. So it's just hard to really move the needle. Even when we were spending the most, it went up a little bit, but it's just hard. And it was kind of going, we thought we saw an upward trend when we were spending a lot in 2012, and now it's kind of down a little bit more. This is what we call your brand rating, rate your overall opinion of Reno, Nevada on a favorable to unfavorable scale. On the left is very favorable. It's now at 12% very favorable to 49% somewhat favorable, so still on the positive scale, so 61% overall favorable, 30% unfavorable, so it's still positive, a net of 31 points on the positive, but we are seeing the net, which is the difference between the positive and the negative. We're seeing the net, the difference going down a little bit, so the unfavorable seems to be going up. And, you know, these are not, again, they're not huge differences, but we did see in 2012, it looked like the spending was starting, we were trending in the right direction. We were driving the favorable up, the unfavorable down. And as we are spending less money, it does look like the favorable now is going down and the unfavorable is going up. These, again, not massive differences, but we are trending kind of in the wrong direction. And we want to point it out because that's why we do these surveys, is to look at trends. And what we'd like to see is if we start spending money again, that we start trending back in the other direction.
Interesting observation, too. What else happened in the summer of 13? We ran the highest average rate in the history of the destination, $100.10 for the month of August. So part of the unfavorable, once again, there's no way to know this without doing a lot of expensive research, but part of the unfavorable might be due to the fact that some of our traditional customers find that they're being a little priced out of the market now. For a destination that's been flat in rate for over 5 years, and suddenly we're up almost $8 year over year. That's the first increase we've had in 6 years. So, you know, negative remarks are sometimes made by people who no longer fit the direction the destination is taking. It's not just we're doing a bad job or they had a bad experience. Maybe they thought we were a good deal before, and now at $70 a night, we're not a good deal anymore. So it's important to keep these things in context and know what else is going on that might be flavoring some of these trends.
Right. And keep in mind, this is still positive. We still have a positive brand in the Bay Area. We have not, you know, we're not in a negative zone. But we do these surveys partially to look at trends so that we can think, you know, in the future. And one of the things we wanted to point out is this is something we want to point out. It is a slight trend in the wrong direction. We want to be aware of it and kind of think about where do we go from here. We've also been asking about, we kind of asked about both brands. We asked about Reno, Nevada. We also about Reno Tahoe USA because we kind of market both brands. Reno Tahoe USA is, of course, not really actually a place, but it is a brand. On the top there is Reno Tahoe USA, and that favorable has actually been, that's always been stronger, partially because, as we know, Tahoe, especially in the Bay Area, is a very, very strong brand. Tahoe's always been more favorable. Reno Tahoe USA has continued to stay very, very strong, 76% favorable, stayed very strong. Reno, though, has gone 61, 68, 69, 63. 61 has kind of trending in the other direction. And then the Reno unfavorable has been trending up, whereas Reno Tahoe USA has been trending, the unfavorable has been trending down. So you can see they're kind of, the two brands are kind of trending in the opposite direction. So it's something we want to keep in mind that while Reno Tahoe USA gets more popular, that it doesn't necessarily, what we had hoped is that that would help support the Reno brand, and we want to make sure that in the future it does. Then we asked an open-ended question, what have you heard or read about Reno lately? These are the open-ended responses, casino and gambling. Casinos, gambling continues to be the top response, but we also see great entertainment, a fun getaway, events. Hot August nights came up very, very high in this survey. Hotel offers, other contests, revitalizing growth, specific events, things like that came up very strong. And then I know this is a little bit of a crazy chart here, but we tried to group some of these responses so that we could see some trends over time. The most consistent response has been something about gambling or casinos at around 30%, and that's been pretty consistent, although it's down a little bit this time. What's interesting is that people mentioning something about events or activities has fluctuated a lot. It went up very, very high in 2012 when kind of that was a key point of our advertising. So when the open-ended question, people were mentioning that a lot, then it went down, then it kind of went back up again. So when we talk about events, people remember events. When we don't talk about them, people don't remember them. The other things, news about Reno or living in Reno kind of stays kind of fluctuating. Visiting, or it's a good place to visit, that kind of went up when we talk about it, and that kind of moves around. And then recreation or outdoor recreation kind of stays low but flat.
Once again, I just wanted to jump in here. Ruth mentioned that Hot August Nights was mentioned on a frequent basis. Well, the Rscva campaign this summer in the Northern California market, some of our billboards had Barrett-Jackson Hot August Nights on them. So once again, it jumps to the highest level ever. For the first time, we've had major marketing of Hot August Nights in Northern California. The marketing budget of the organization itself is quite small, but $60,000 worth of billboards in key positions on the major highways of the San Francisco Bay Area obviously made people think top of mind about that event. So once again, pretty decisive information that supports the fact that our marketing dollars do change people's perceptions.
So these are the specific brand attributes, and we ask these on a scale. We say, do you agree or disagree that the following describe Reno? And then we're showing these on an average scale so that you can just kind of, and the top has always been and continues to be, is a good value. Gets an average score of 3.62, is unpretentious, is easy and fun. Those have been consistently your top 4 brand ratings. Is a good value, is unpretentious, is easy, is fun. That's what the Bay Area, that's how they think of Reno, and those are good. They've been consistent. Also, wide variety of activities, has activities I like, is relaxing, has a lot to do. Casinos is unique, and is a place to go with children. We've been asking that. That has never been one of your strong brand attributes, but we've been asking that just to see how it changes. So then you can start to see these trends over time and how they've changed. These top 2 here is unpretentious and easy. Those have been consistent. They have really not changed. Those have been strong and good attributes. What's interesting here are some of the ones that have shifted. So has a wide variety of activities, really peaked in August of 2012, and then had a bit of a drop. So when we talked about it a lot in 2012, and then now we have less agreement that it has a wide variety of activities. Is relaxing, also kind of had a peak and then dropped a little bit. Has casinos I like. Has kind of been less of has been strong, but is a little bit of a sloping line on downward. Special events, has a lot of special events, also a little bit of a sloping downward. Both at the top here is a good value and fun. Those have both been pretty strong, although it is a little bit concerning that they've been a little bit sloping downward. And then these 2 has activities I like and has a lot to do. both peaked in August of 2012. They were very strong in August of 2012, and both have definitely had downward trends, as we haven't talked about those as much. Has Activities I Like has a lot to do. So those haven't penetrated as much because we haven't been spending money talking about those. We spent a lot of money talking about those and haven't spent as much money talking about those attributes as much now. And the one that really has had the most downward trend is Has Activities I Like, and so we just wanted to point that out. It does seem when we talk about activities and special things that it penetrates, and that one does seem to be that has kind of the most downward trend. And again, we think it's just because we're not spending as much money, so it's just not penetrating as much.
And just a reminder, August of 12, we spent 1.8 million. August of 13, 700,000 was, and not just in August, but the measurement was at that point. And then we're proposing and looking to spend 1.4 million. So we're looking to double this year's spending next year, which gets us up within shooting distance of what we did at the all-time peak in 12.
And then we did want to note that we did ask how many nights do you spend away from home on personal or non-business travel in the last 12 months. You can see here that only now 7% said they'd spent none, compared to 9% in February of 2012 and 12% in August of 2012. And the overall now 91% saying they're spending 2 or more nights away from home, and the dark brown is higher, 31% saying 21 or more nights, 28% before, and definitely an upward trend from August of 2012. Overall, you can just feel, all of the numbers, we do a lot of polling in the Bay Area. By every indicator, economic trends are coming back in the Bay Area. People are starting to feel more confident in the economy, and so, people are going to start spending more money. It's just, that's what's going to happen. The top of mind getaway, when you think about getaways or short trips, what places come to mind? Lake Tahoe still comes out number 1, 25%. Mentioning Lake Tahoe. Vegas is number 2, has been consistent. Monterey, Napa, LA, the coastal cities. Reno still gets 8% mentioning Reno, but and then the percentage next to that, in the parentheses next to that is our ranking. So right now Reno is the 11th item mentioned. We were 8th before, and so we've kind of dropped in rank. So it's still 8% mentioning it, but now it's 11th instead of 8th because other places have jumped ahead, like Santa Cruz and San Diego, San Francisco, some of the coastal cities, and a lot of California cities have been advertising in the Bay Area a lot. This is a little hard to read, but you can just see some of the trend on some of the locations here. Los Angeles, the California coastal cities really made a big jump. San Diego as well made a big jump. San Diego has been advertising in the Bay Area a lot. And then Santa Cruz also has been advertising a lot, and they made a big jump in their top of mind response. We asked how frequently have you visited Reno? We still have 30% saying they've spent 1 or more nights in Reno. It's been almost dead on consistent over the surveys. The percentage saying they've been here, it really has not changed. Consistently, about 30% say they've been here in the last 2 years. And then Reno is a place I want to visit. 14% strongly agree, 42% somewhat agree. And then 27% somewhat disagree, 12% strongly disagree. The concern here that we have is that the disagree has gone up slightly and the agree has gone down slightly. Again, these are slight changes. They're not huge changes. There was a little bit of a peak in 2012, and now we're seeing a slight decrease. And the difference between the agree and the disagree was a difference at 29 points in 2012, and now we're at 17 points, the difference. So it's trending in the wrong direction. Again, it's still a majority saying they agree they want to visit. It's not a crisis point, but it is trending in the wrong direction, and so we want to point it out that, we want to look at this and say, okay, this is not trending in the way we want to go. We want to move it in the other direction. And just to finish, again, we always hate to you know, we never like to bring not great news, but we just wanted to point out, so again, this is the average spend is the green line. So you can see how that's fluctuated a lot. Then the light blue is the net, that's the desire to visit, that's the percentage, that's that difference in the the percentage that say agree they want to visit versus disagree they want to visit. So it's that change in the agree I want to visit versus disagree I want to visit. There's a 17-point difference in how that's been declining. And then the brand rating, the Reno favorable rating, how that's been, it was at a high point, the difference was at a high point in August and now has kind of dipped a little bit. So you can see how those ratings kind of trend along with your spending. So, I mean, I'm not here to kind of advertise and say, you have to spend more money, you have to spend more money. You obviously also have to spend it right. But clearly we see that the money, you know, that as you spend less money, or you spend more money, it has an impact. And so the money, the research clearly shows it has an impact. When you spend in the market, it has an impact on the desire to visit and the overall brand. So that's our report, and we're here to answer questions. And I know it's a lot of data and to take in. So.
Thank you very much. That's a very thorough report. Are there questions for Ms. Bernstein? Ms. Carano?
Thank you. I would love to have this on paper. Do you take it to your meetings when you're asking for the co-op?
We actually didn't get the report until after those meetings were held, but we've had the conversation orally with a number of people.
So I think all of our hotels, not just mine and the ones represented here, would like to see this and take it to their executives. We're in the middle of budgeting for 2014 and beyond. So if we could
Sure.
get this on paper or in our computer and really hit it hard, I think everybody needs to see it because I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. As I say, once we got it, it was very clear to us, and for those conversations that happened after that point, we did make this point because it's important for people to know that as a destination, if our number one market declines, you know, sitting on the sidelines is not a very acceptable position.
Any other questions, discussion? Would anyone like to move to accept the report? There's a motion and a second to accept the report. Any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Then that would take us to Mr. Rivers, I believe, and the CAFRA.
Thank you, Mr. Humke. You have in your packet our comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 12-13, as well as at your seat some required information distributed by our auditors, Kafori Armstrong. I'm going to ask Felicia O'Carroll to come up and give a brief presentation on our audit report, and she has with her also Pam Dory Trust that work directly on our audit.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairman Humke and CEO Baum and members of the board. I wish I could say that the number of visitors here was dependent on how well you did on your audit, because everybody would want to come because you got an A on your audit if we were giving out grades. Again, I'm Felicia O'Carroll. I'm the partner with Kafori Armstrong and Company in charge of the authorities audit. As Brian pointed out, Pam Dory Truss is with me. You've seen us around here a lot. One thing that Kafori Armstrong and Company offers you is continuity. We don't send our new staff out here for you to train. Pam and I are always present on the job. We also have one other partner, our newest partner, Dan Carter, who also works on this job. So, as I said, this was a good audit. If you look at the financial section tab, and I'm going to tell you where these things are located, you certainly do not have to follow along in your book. I'll tell you where they're located, is the opinion. And you did receive what's known as an unmodified opinion. That used to be referred to as an unqualified opinion. I think the semantics of calling something unqualified finally resonated with the accounting profession, and they did change that terminology to unmodified, meaning it was not subject to modification. It is the highest level of assurance that the CPA profession offers, and it means that your financial statement presented fairly the financial position and results of operations of the authority for the year ended June 30th, 2013. One other item in the book that you might be interested in is what's known as management's discussion and analysis. This is a required part of the audit. It is put together by your finance staff, and it's written in layman's terms, not accounting terms, and it gives you a good overview of the activity of the authority for the year ended June 30th, 2013. The reason we present this to you is there is a Nevada revised statute that requires that certain parts of your audit be read into the minutes, and that's the reason that we come here and present to you each year. If we look at the government-wide financial statements, these start on page 13, and these present the results of the past year, similar to a business where everything is put together in two financial statements. And what we find for the year ended June 30th, 2013 is that there was very little unusual activity during the year. You traded in some golf carts, and that doesn't seem like much of a big change probably to you on the board, but it's a very difficult accounting entry, so we think it was a big deal. You also received a partially donated sign at the Livestock Event Center. Again, the accounting for that is very tricky, so it was something a little unusual. You terminated your guaranteed investment contract. That was the investment contract that was paying you somewhere in excess of 6% interest. They understood when they talked about having you terminated that you were going to be losing out on interest going forward, so they did pay you a $2 million plus or minus sort of kicker to terminate that contract. And you now have that money available to invest in other items. And this was the first year that your golf course operations are shown reported in the general fund and as a general governmental activity rather than a business type activity. As such, when we do comparisons to prior years, it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. But if we do talk about that, I'll be reminded to tell you about that. The one thing that's a little unusual and a little disheartening when you look at your financial statements is you do reflect net position, and net position is what used to be called net assets. They're negative $47.2 million. That's a big red number to show at the bottom of your financial statements. We talk about this every year, and a big reason for that is the way that the authority was set up. You're not allowed to hold title to a lot of the land that your buildings sit on. And while that's the case, you do show negative net position. It's not something to be concerned about. We watch it as it fluctuates, and it actually fluctuates very little from year to year, and just something to keep in mind if anyone would ever question you on that. The statement of activities, which is on page 13, displays how much of your functions are supported by user fees. And not surprisingly, none of your functions are supported fully by user fees. And the reason for that is because the primary funding source for the authority are room taxes. And room taxes are not dedicated to any one particular function. They are for your use and your discretion. The functions that you report in the financial statements are general government, community support, and debt service. Community support includes all your facilities, all your convention and tourism, and now includes golf. So the vast majority of everything is reported in that one. You do have some interest and fiscal charges that come through as part of your debt service function. And the roughly $22 million that you get in the form of room taxes are available to you to allocate to those functions as you need to. When people look at the financial statements, they kind of forget about the notes to the financial statements. And the notes are actually required for full disclosure. You have some 20 pages of notes that follow your financial statements, and it provides a lot of additional information about things like cash and investments. There's notes on your capital assets, all the depreciation that you take every year, your debt. It goes through a a very detailed analysis of every one of your debt issues, talks about your retirement plan and how much you contributed to the public employees retirement system. And then there's that horrible one in Note I. That is your post-employment benefits. This is the one that when the people who are your bond raters look at it and they see that you have a big unfunded liability sitting out there, it has put some of your compatriots and some of the local governments into bankruptcy. And that's not the case in Nevada. It is there for your disclosure. It shows that over the next 30 years, they expect that you would have to fund $8.5 million in benefits to your retirees. I'm preaching to the choir here. You all see it, you read about it, but just something to keep in mind. Right now, it's not required to be reported on your financial statements. It is reported in the notes. That's going to change within the next few years because the Governmental Accounting Standards Board is once again trying to prove their worth by issuing all kinds of new standards. So things are going to change over the next few years. One good note is Note K. That's the one where we are required to disclose whether or not we found any potential violations of Nevada revised statutes or the Nevada Administrative Code. And I'm pleased to report that we found none this year. Also in your financial statements, you'll see budget to actual comparisons where what you set forth in your budget is compared to what you actually did. That is a requirement of Nevada revised statutes that those be included as well. And because you submit for the Certificate of Achievement, you're also required to have a statistical section in your financial statements as well as an introductory section, and those are included. And I'd like to congratulate the authority because you did receive the Certificate of Achievement from the Government Finance Officers Association again last year, 26th time you've received that award, and that is a tremendous accomplishment. That's very timely because one thing I do want to talk about is the fact that you do have a very small finance department, but you have a very competent finance department. When we walk in, the financial statements are ready for us to audit. Everything is presented to us by the time we are leaving the field. Brian and Pam keep in constant contact to ensure that the progress continues even after we leave the field. And they're very responsive to us. If we have a question for them, we might leave for lunch and the response to that question will be on our desk when we get back. It's actually a pleasure to do your audit, and we look forward to continuing in the years that come. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Ms. O'Carroll? Very nice as usual. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, did you have a question?
I have a question and a comment. First off, I just want to, I really want to commend Brian, as you did. I think you do a great job. And I actually read through this thing. I hope there's not a quiz on it. There's a lot of information in
You
here.
didn't fall asleep?
Well, it was getting toward that time, but no. And I also looked at the section H and I as well, and got pretty bogged down there, I'll tell you that. I guess my question is only, I mean, as I read through it, it says, yeah, well, you're going to be in a hole, $8 million. I mean, should we be concerned about that, or, I mean,
Are you
I
referring
don't know what
particularly
to do
to the post-employment retirement or
Yeah.
benefit portion?
Yeah,
We've taken some steps to mitigate it going forward, I guess you would say. Effective January 1st, 12, we stopped offering the plan, which is going to stop it from growing. There are still the active retirees and those that basically are in that 10-year plus service amount that will continue to accrue that benefit. But as those people retire, and who knows what Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act becomes down the road, that could potentially reduce some of the benefits or the need for it. But we do, with Charlotte and HR, look at that regularly in terms of what can we do to minimize, mitigate, shift the burden, look at different plans, different options to try to minimize that cost.
and I know we're on a pay-as-you-go basis as opposed to having funds set aside to do it. So it's basically, it comes out of the general fund, I assume, every year, whatever it needs, whatever amount needs to come out.
That is correct, yeah. Currently, it's about $100,000 a year cost to the organization, and there's about 34 retirees currently receiving that benefit.
So at this point, I mean, we're not going to panic. We're keeping an eye on it. We're doing everything we can to do to deal with it. Is there anything else that you would suggest or could think about that we should consider as a board?
At this point, the first step was to stop it going forward, which we have taken that step. It is hard to do too much to those folks that are already receiving a benefit. So those 34-ish folks that are receiving it right now, it would be difficult to impair what they're receiving. We have talked about going to different Medicare type plans, shifting those folks off of our active plan, because right now it's currently a blended plan, active, retirees, dependents, everybody's got the same option to try to mitigate that. We've looked at potentially only extending that benefit through Medicare age. There are a whole host of options out there. At this point, we haven't looked to implement any of those. We've been somewhat waiting to see what the Obamacare Affordable Care Act becomes, honestly, to see what that means, what that does to premiums. We were very fortunate, if you remember this year, we essentially got a rate pass, which helps the cost. And that $8 million, honestly, not to undermine any actuaries in the world, but they're really throwing darts. I mean, that $8 million could be 2, it could be 25, depending on what happens. There's a tremendous amount of assumptions that go into it, but if you can pinpoint what the world's going to look like in 30 years, much smarter than the rest of us, I believe. So we have taken that first step to try to reduce our future benefits, and I think that was a very wise step. As folks retire, as folks leave the organization, obviously some pass away, that benefit changes from year to year. We do a survey on a biannual basis on that, so we'll be looking to do that either next year or the following to see what changes have occurred. They look at our turnover rates, they look at our premium costs over that span to see what's happening and adjust the premiums going forward.
And I would echo those same comments. I think Brian's been very proactive about looking at alternatives. Right now, the blended rate between retirees and actives is required by statute as well. So, they would pay a higher rate, and the actives would pay a little bit lower rate probably if it wasn't a blended rate, but your hands are kind of tied right now. So, and in 2 years, you're going to have to start reporting the amount of the public employees retirement system, the PERS liability that's yours that has never been accounted for by the local governments. That will probably dwarf this number. So lots of things to provide for full disclosure and transparency. The one thing you can't do is record all of those amounts from future years that you're going to use to pay these, but you do have to report the liability. So it's kind of an uneven situation for local governments. Thanks.
Interesting. Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments? Shall we accept the report? Thank you. There's a motion and a second to accept the report. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Then that would take us to the somewhat traditional consent items, I believe. Mr. President or Mr. Rivers?
We actually didn't have a finance committee meeting, so I don't know if you can take this in a block vote or consent. Brett?
Because they weren't heard, we probably should at least have a staff report on record. It can be condensed for these items.
Sounds good.
Go
That's
ahead.
okay with you? I'll
Yes.
be brief.
Yes, please.
This is for the month of August 2013, so the second month of our fiscal year. As Chris mentioned earlier, we had a phenomenal month of August, following a great month of July also. We were up 9.6% to budget, 9.3% year over year, and as you can see, rate was the driver of that. We really were pretty well flat year over year as well as to budget, but had phenomenal growth in room rate, $7.60 to budget, almost 9%, and almost $9 year over year. Some of that obviously was attributable to Barrett-Jackson, but historically, we have not seen rate increases to that degree when occupancy has stayed flat. It has been driven by conventions coming in or group business or some other anomaly that has allowed us to see that rate increase. So it's been a very nice trend for July and August, and actually September we just received. We were actually down a reasonable amount in rooms, but actually still saw rate increases. So we are starting to see the rate come up. It would be great to see the rooms go up with it going forward. There we go. For the month of August on the operating side, facility revenues saw an increase of $83,000 to budget, 14%. Operating expenses were above budget by $127,000, but that's largely due to timing. July was quite a bit below budget. Most of that is due to the timing of the marketing spend. As Chris mentioned, in August we spent a pretty good amount in the Bay Area. Non-operating expenses were $18,000 above budget as a result of tax increase, collections to Incline being paid through that grants line. We grant half of the money back to Incline that we collect within that tax district. And then from margins for the month, we were up $183,000. That again is largely driven by the room tax collections for the month. For year to date, as I mentioned, July was a good month. Yes.
We have a question for Mr. Hall.
My question is that when we look at the revenues that were captured in July and August, those numbers look really good, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see that and delighted. But I'm curious, how does that compare to where you would be, say, 4 or 5 years ago before everything went in the tank? Is that number, the monthly numbers, is that getting close to where you were before?
No, we're still quite a bit below that. We peaked at an annual basis. We peaked at a little over $300 million in taxable revenue. And for the last 3 or 4 years, we were around 230. We got up to about 250. This is some growth, but it's still not going to get us back to where we were at the peak of 303. It's a great trend, but it's still a pretty big hill to climb. Year to date again, the 2 months, July and August, we're up almost 10% to budget, which is great, 14% year over year. And again, it's largely driven by average rate, 10.6% growth to budget, 12.9% year over year. It's phenomenal growth, and hopefully we'll continue to see that throughout the rest of the year. On the operating side, facility revenues for the 2 months are down about $15,000, 1% from budget. Operating expenses are about $8,000 above budget. Non-operating is $75,000 below budget, and that's just due to the timing of capital projects. The spend essentially at the Livestock Event Center for the sound system that we're putting in didn't hit until September, so we'll see that realized then. And then for margins, through 2 months, we're $500,000 ahead, which is phenomenal. Again, largely driven by room tax. $470,000 of the $523 is room tax revenues. We will give some of that back in September, but the components of that, facility margins are down about $140,000. In July, you'll remember we had some room rebates budgeted that we didn't hit at the convention center. That's the largest driver there. Golf rounds have been a little bit soft. Part of that's due to the shift of when the schools went back in, we believe, going back in a little bit earlier than we had in the past. And on the sales and marketing, it's $100,000 better. And again, that's just the timing of the spend, primarily in convention sales, when John and his folks are traveling, and the promotional expenses associated with that. We also have attached the facility detail, and I would submit the August year-to-date report of operations for approval.
Why don't we just treat them as consent, take one gang motion or group motion at the end. Please continue.
We'll move now to convention sales. John Linen is at the ASAE 5-Star Weekend, which is a very elite event that only top sponsors can attend, entertaining presidents, CEOs, and senior officers of trade associations, so that's a great opportunity for us. We have a bit of a log jam. We have a lot of definite business, and we're trying to get the hotels and organizations to sign the contracts so we can take credit for it. The good news is that by the end of next month, we'll have 83,256 room nights versus a goal of 77,781 year-to-date, which is 107% of goal. So that is all definite, committed business. We're just waiting for the paperwork to clear. Give you a sense of where we are. Same time last year, we were at 60% of goal. So 2012, 60% of goal at that point. This year, 107% of goal. So still work to be done, but the trend is finally going in the right direction, where we are getting these pieces of business. We are winning against other destinations, and the volume that our new sales team has promised is really starting to be realized. In terms of events, I won't repeat myself. We've talked about several of these already. IMEX just concluded in Las Vegas, a major trade show that's only a few years old, and we had a presentation group down there, and they reported it was a very positive event once again. We've got a number of sales calls coming up: New Jersey, Florida, Seattle, Midwest, Houston, Chicago. So between now and the end of the year, although in many businesses things are starting to slow down, it's a very active time for the sales team. One of the things to point out is, for example, in our New Jersey sales calls, one of the presentations is with Tally Management Group. That is a result of a contact we made at the Next Gen conference. So it was terrific having those young leaders out here and having them exposed to our region, but we're actually getting business opportunities out of it. We also have the Hospitality, Financial, and Technology Professionals Group. He actually did a FAM trip in conjunction with being selected for the Next Gen conference, and has two conferences he's looking at Reno for, one for 1,800 people and the other for 4,000 people. So it's a great thing to do to invest in the future, but in the short term, we're getting business opportunities out of it as well. Those are the key events going on. In tourism sales, we finalized our Southwest Vacations marketing plan. We're working with a number of our hotel partners to put together a program with Southwest that we hope will prove that we can actually drive business by marketing in conjunction with an air carrier. If we can't do it with Southwest, we can't do it with anyone with their over 50% market share here. I'm a little bit skeptical, only because I'm not sure that their vacation package area is as powerful as it might have been 5 or 10 years ago. But we'll find out, and we'll learn a lot from this effort. And our hotel partners have really asked us to do this. So we decided if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And we did it at a budget level that was up substantially from what we had initially discussed. So we'll report on that when we know more. We talked about China earlier. There's a Chinese FAM with United Airlines, 20 operators coming in September 22nd, or having come in September 22nd. So we are doing things here and there with the Asian market. We've also had some groups in from South Korea, and we continue to look at opportunities that are presented to us through NCOT. But we'll really be stepping up at a higher level and be more proactive in the coming months. U.S. Airways top travel agent scavenger hunt was in. Mexico sales mission with NCOT. A lot of ski groups coming up in the fall, obviously, in anticipation of the upcoming ski season. Delta Airlines did have that Korean travel wholesalers FAM. And, the Korean market, the Brazilian market, the Indian market, we talk a lot about China, but these large countries where a middle class is starting to travel all have potential for us, and will require much more emphasis on international marketing and sales going forward than this destination's ever had before. The Governor's Conference on Tourism is coming up in December, and we'll have an opportunity to meet with other people from around the state to talk about trends and directions. But in the interest of time, that is a report for both convention and tour and travel sales. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions to this point? Mr. Curtis.
Chris, you may have answered this question, but I want to make sure that I'm hearing it right. I read through the convention sales report and noted that net room nights are 48% of year-to-date goal. Year-to-date new business total room nights were 38% of goal. I think I heard you say that but for the paperwork, we're at 107%.
That's correct. And what has happened is that we have all these wins that have happened at this time of year, but contracts are more cumbersome than ever before.
Right.
Some of our hotel partners, we can't take credit until our hotels have managed to sign off on the contracts with the customer. So we generated the business, but the hotels are ultimately signing most of the contracts that make it definite. So the customer says, we're coming there, but until that contract's signed, we don't take credit. Now, I guess in a looser organization, you might say, well, they said they're coming, so it's definite. but we're very conservative here. So this is all business that is definite for the region, but until we get the signed paperwork, we're not taking credit. By November, it should all be cleared.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I like the way you think. And my question was, when I read this, I just asked myself, are we doing this again like we did last year? I mean, are our goals appropriate? And at 100% a goal, I guess the answer is probably yes. So you're comfortable with the goals?
Well, as I've said to
stand?
this board, I think that in this year, we have the players in place, we have the programs in place, the sponsorships, and the capability to make those goals.
Excellent.
And these numbers seem to support that. If, 5 months into the year, we're at 107% of where we had hoped to be. We also have some new business that we haven't been planning on that's coming definite, and a lot of other things that are moving forward that we don't quite have the numbers yet. Film incentives, for example. That kicks in on January 1st, goes for another 6 months of this fiscal year, and we don't know what kind of numbers we're going to get out of that, but we know there'll be thousands of room nights that come from that will add to that total. So, yes, it's not easy, but I think we can make the goals this year.
Well, I, for one, am very pleased. Thank you. You're doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions at this time? Let us move on to marketing. Ma'am.
Okay, I have a lot to share with you, so I'll just get these passed around. Some ads that recently came out for our consumer campaign via magazine and Sunset. I'll head this way. On the convention sales side, we have a great mention in Smart Meetings magazine, photograph and image of Chris with a quote and some information on one of our programs, a couple of our programs that we do that's above and beyond and unique for the Bureau. So that's great acknowledgement. And Collaborate magazine just came out, and we have our group co-op campaign that we co-op with North Lake Tahoe that is in that. Chris, I think, had mentioned some of the top 10 lists that we keep popping up on, and we had a really good one last week, which is livability, stating that Reno, Nevada is one of the top 100 best places to live, and we came in ranking number 9. So excellent exposure on that front. And last of all, for my handouts is wonderful article that appeared in the New York Times, highlighting the Midtown area, Reno neighborhood, some of the bars. And what's unique about this particular article, fabulous that it was in the New York Times, but it also popped up in Korea somewhere in a publication, and last night I saw that press in UK also picked it up. So it's getting a bit of a viral following. On the marketing, so our fall campaign was going strong. It's starting to wrap up. Radio ended up in the beginning of September. We'll be repeating that in the spring. We've got our billboards that ended also in September, but thanks to Excel Media, they had noticed on one of the street corners in San Francisco, on Van Ness, kitty corner was North Lake Tahoe, had a billboard. And so they went back to the vendor for the billboards and said, no, we don't feel that that's appropriate, that we're kitty corner from North Lake Tahoe. We should be in different locations. That's not fair. And they renegotiated and got us 5 extra weeks, or a value of $15,000. So we do have a billboard that ran, an extra one that ran through the middle of October. Our A-Res booking engine is up and live on our site, so I invite everyone to go take a look. We've gone through months of testing, so there will be no issue. There's no bugs in it, no issues.
Unlike some recent online sites.
And I have 100% confidence in Rick Saki, who kind of was very instrumental in getting this going.
I just got to say, I was so excited when I went to our website recently and saw on that landing page, make a reservation, and you fill in your dates and your specs, and you can check out rates and availability at hotels in our area. That is a feature that most destination websites don't have, and this one's clean and easy to use, and is really a terrific addition to our website. And by the way, that site, I used to celebrate 150,000 visitors a month, unique visitors. It's now doing 180,000 unique visitors a month. So it's a really, really important platform for us going forward.
And we're also excited about it because we're able to offer this at no charge to the hotel properties. We're paying the back end fee. The hotels are getting whatever rate they put up as their rate. We're not taking a percentage, or ARES doesn't get a cut of it. It's an exciting program. And we plan to be much more public about it and do a launch probably right around the first of the year. We want to just, people can book on it now, but we want to just make sure there's no other glitches or anything. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to report, Film Reno Tahoe, we're moving rapidly forward with a lot of activities with that, and Chris is very involved with it. On November 14th, we're hosting a workshop. We'll have our consultant, Jeff Spillman, here to spearhead it along with our coordinator. And we're doing 3 sessions on the 14th. We're going to do a seminar workshop for businesses who are interested in being vendors that have to do with film production. Then we're doing one, and we got the invitation out earlier this week, for hotel properties, the hospitality industry that want to know more about it. And then finally, the last panel will be individuals who want to work or be part of film production. We'll be doing a press release on that prior to get some of the local companies to come out and learn about it. And I think that's all I have. If there's any questions?
Thank
With
you.
that, I submit my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the marketing report?
I just want to make one other comment. We had done a press release last year, you'll recall, on all the top 10 lists that we have been appearing on, that was picked up by so many national media outlets, 165, I think was the last count. Since then, we've started a new list, and not only are we number 9 in the top 100 places to live in America, but we've got a number of great rankings in a whole bunch of new areas now. It really is quite phenomenal if you look at the variety of things we're being recognized for. So sometime in the next 30 days or so, we're going to put out a new release, which is an update of the old release, and get more national exposure. It is so powerful to have all these third parties, Yahoo, Zagat, all these big names in the internet and in print media, finding us worthy of top 10 status, or top 100 or 50, whatever the rankings are, in such a wide variety of areas. And when you put it all together, it has quite a bit of critical mass to it that catches people's attention. So when we say we're the next big thing based on all these rankings, I think there's a lot of credibility behind it. I don't know of other destinations that are getting so many top rankings in so many different areas on such a consistent basis. So something to be very proud of. 9th best place to live in America, that's a pretty incredible thing for us to have accomplished.
It is. Mr. Hawkins.
I'm just trying to figure out how these numbers are coinciding with the core market research study. It seems like those are going the wrong way, these are going the right way. I mean, which one is it? It seems like the perception of the area isn't keeping pace with the economic recovery as far as the money spent in advertising, and I know it's down. But it seems like this is going one direction, and the perception is going another direction as far as the people that were tested anyway.
Well, it's important to note that the research we saw today is Northern California only. We also have research that of people from all over the country who've stayed here, and there are a lot of positives in that. So it's important not to overreact on one market. It's an important market, but once again, all we have to do to get those numbers up in that market, as we've seen, is spend closer to the level we spent in the summer of 12.
I guess I'm saying I was hoping that, you know, we're supposed to be on some sort of an economic recovery. I was hoping that would kind of offset.
Well, but I would think an $8 increase year over year in average rate is sign of economics moving in the right direction.
I'm
So,
just looking at the perception issue, I guess.
yeah. And I do believe the perception issue is trending positive, and it's helped by stories about Reno in a positive nature in so many different locations. So I see this as very good news. We may not have seen the full benefits of that good news being out there, but the fact that for the last year we've been getting so many kudos in so many different ways and have been funneling that to the population, I think does trend positively.
Which is why that, I know it's one area, which is why it's kind of surprising, but I appreciate that.
It's your traditional turning around a battleship. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a trend, and what we're seeing is a lot of positives that are starting to bear out in the rate. If you look at our average rate, we were $72 5+ years in a row, and suddenly we're over 80. That's worth celebrating. That is a real trend. That is not a one-month aberration. That is year-to-date numbers on a calendar year showing us going in the right direction in terms of revenues. That's $25 million more year-to-date in room tax revenue.
Thank you.
Room revenues, rather.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
Just a quick question, and I'm not sure who to direct this at, but I think originally when we're talking about Film Reno, the original intent was to wean ourselves off of Jeff Spillman, and that Julie Greer would be the person internally that would oversee the film component. But I'd heard that we hired somebody recently so I'm kind of confused. Are we changing direction on how we're going to handle that?
We have modified our direction. We've got a position in marketing now that handles marketing responsibilities, but also is production coordinator for film and television. It's a mid-level position. The former person in that position has moved to Oregon, and we did upgrade the position slightly, but it's still a mid-level position on the marketing team. So what we realize is that Julie will handle all the room requirements of any film crews that come here, but most of the activity that we need to accommodate is here in Reno. And in doing so, when somebody comes in for a tour, like Original Productions coming in next week, Ken Kozer, who's our new production coordinator, will be out going around with them, and he would be their ongoing contact going forward. So he and Julie form a team. Julie handles the room needs as a national sales manager. Ken in marketing handles the on-site needs here in Washoe County.
So does this new person, are they responsible for the sales component of going and meeting with the clients? Who owns I guess the goals that I think we established, 10,000 room nights as being our goal for the
Correct.
January through June. Who owns that? Whose goal is that?
Those are Julie's goals as a sales manager. But Ken Kozer, for example, we are doing a producers forum in Los Angeles in a couple of weeks. Ken will be there calling and talking to the producers. He has a background that involves film and marketing, and what we found is that that's the more appropriate kind of conversation to have. It's kind of backwards in the film industry, as you know, compared to meetings and conventions. Meetings and conventions, the hotel is very important, and they want to know all about the hotel up front. The film industry uses hotels, but that's not their priority. They want to know, can you accommodate their film's needs? And then once you do, okay, we need 50 rooms for 3 months. So what we found is leading with sales, a person with a traditional sales background doesn't make sense. We really need to lead with somebody who understands the film industry, and then once we get the commitment, then the sales takes care of it in conjunction. Basically, we've evolved to where I was in Michigan when we did this. We had a person in sales and a person in marketing working together, and that's the way we've ended up going.
All right. Any other questions on the items D through G? May we have a group motion for items D through G? There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. That would take us to the contract extension. Is that Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize Mr. Baum gave somewhat of a staff report earlier in his president's report, so I won't linger long. Snaffle Futurity, which most of you all are familiar with, is the premier horse show that we host out at the Livestock Event Center each year. It actually originated back in Reno in the early 80s, was held in what used to be called the Coliseum for a brief while, and then moved to the Livestock Event Center when it opened in 1985. Due to certain reasons, they actually moved the show in the early 90s down to Las Vegas for 1 or 2 years, and then subsequently from there moved it over to the Central Valley in California, in Fresno, where it was hosted through 1998. We were successful after their 98 show in getting Snafflebit to return to Reno in 1999. Through a series of 3 and 5 year agreements, we've been able to accommodate the show, and I would suggest, and I think they would too, successfully. However, at the conclusion of the 2012 show, which was at the conclusion of our at that time most recent 5-year agreement, they were not willing to enter into a long-term agreement. A combination of the fact of the lack of our capital improvements in the Livestock Event Center, and quite honestly, just the fact that there were other major markets that were soliciting the show and being extremely aggressive. In particular, Las Vegas at South Point Hotel Casino, and then in Oklahoma City and in Fort Worth, Texas. We were successful in negotiating a 1-year extension, which is what the show that just recently finished in 2013, with our commitment to fund capital improvements on an ongoing basis at the Livestock Event Center. I have listed the capital improvements that we were able to fund and complete between 2012 and 13. Those five projects actually totaled close to $450,000 that we were able to put in with not only ourselves but with help from the city of Reno. Most recently, at this last year's event, us, along with Las Vegas, Oklahoma City, and Fort Worth, were invited to present proposals for the Snafflebit Futurity. We were successful in the proposal that we presented for a 3-year agreement. It does require, and one of the reasons that a lot of shows, this gets to be a little bit of a gray area. We make deals on shows and contracts all the time, but the fact that part of our proposal did include a commitment of a minimum of $200,000 a year for the next 3 years at the Livestock Event Center. Our council felt it would be best if we brought forward to the board for your approval. In addition to, there's a significant rental discount, which the equine industry is no different than what we face in the meetings business at our convention center in downtown. Very competitive. The package offered actually in Fort Worth, it's actually a state-funded program that they have, which involves tax increments, that's been phenomenally successful for them on the local level. I don't know that the state leaders in Texas would agree with that. South Point, which just has a beautiful facility down in Las Vegas, also came forward with an exceptionally strong package. However, our combination of rental discounts and a commitment for capital improvements, along with the fact Snafflebit likes Reno, they've been very successful here. They have a bond with us, and I think they want to stay here as long as we can remain competitive. For your reference, I have included the letter that we received from the executive director of the Rain Cowhorse Association a year ago, outlining some of their concerns and how we've addressed. And then also, normally we don't like to bring forward this much information, but under the circumstances, the actual copy of the Memorandum of Understanding. Upon your acceptance or approval, we would then move forward with contracting with National Rain Cowhorse Association. Obviously, you do retain the right to not approve, and then we could go back and try to renegotiate. However, we do feel like this is a competitive package that meets the need for us and Snafflebit, and based on the competition, a pretty fair package. That's a summary of where we are. I'm happy to answer any details that you may have or questions.
Thank you. We have a question, Mr. Hawkins.
Couple of questions. Offering 75,000 rent reduction, 1350 moving forward. What was it last year? Was there any rent reduction last year or previous years?
No, sir. There was not.
So it looks like the total amount of revenue they generate is between 175 and 200?
Roughly, depending upon, certain factors are food and beverage commissions and
So
so
we're
forth.
offering more than they generate, which I know we do a lot.
No, sir.
I mean, in the, for example, the convention center, it
Well,
operates at a loss.
We're offering a 70, for instance, and next year, we're offering a group that's going to generate us $175,000 to $200,000 in revenue. We'll get a $50,000 discount. So our revenue will still be in excess of the discount, but.
I'm factoring in the improvements, the
Oh, the
200,000
capital,
a
I'm
year.
sorry. Yes, sir. If you cap, well, if you want to factor in that, we also have a lot of labor.
No
and-
denying we need improvements. There's no denying
Yes, sir.
that.
Correct.
I mean, how did they come up with 200,000 a year? How do they know what 200,000 gets in Reno for improvements? I mean, I saw a comprehensive list that they came up with. Way-
200,000 is more of a level, I think, from a staff that we felt that we could commit to, that we could reasonably commit to. $200,000 is, it's not going to get us a very long way on an annual basis at the Livestock Event Center. However, that was the dollar amount that we felt comfortable just from our own budget.
Right, and I'm just looking at, you know, the rent reduction, the capital improvements on a set dollar amount versus items that they wanted done. Not to mention, they want some dirt moved and stored probably for future use every year.
Well, they don't necessarily, just we're real clear, they don't get everything they want. And secondly, and I would say this, the improvements that we did, the ones, especially like the ones we did last year, the marquee, the sound system, they don't just benefit Snaffle-Bit Futurity. And there are other groups that take advantage of those
We take
as
credit
well.
with each group for the improvements we've made just for them.
But because, no different than a bigger show at our convention center, the demand they have drives the deal. And 200,000, as I mentioned, was about all that we could honestly afford to commit. Hopefully, we have more than that. We'd love to be able to fund more, but we do have a minimum commitment.
Brian, have we identified where it's going to come from?
General fund room tax dollars.
Okay, thank you.
And we also, I mean, we have a relationship with the city of Reno where they've been generous enough to fund some, which we'll continue to ask. But in all fairness, we can't count on that as we move ahead. But this is all that we felt we could contribute. Or honestly, hopefully we can do more.
Thank you.
Mr. Humke, if I might add, on the commitment portion, the 75,000 discount this year is all that would impact the 13-14 year. For future years, we would just incorporate that through the normal budgeting process when we bring that forward to you all of the event itself is going to generate X and the capital dollars are tied to promises we made to the group.
Mr. Flynn?
When we look at major room night, how many room nights are we talking about here?
Trackable room nights, Mr. Flynn, we're looking at 1,500 to 2,000, but in all reality, probably 4 times that. 4 times that annually. I mean, I'll give you an example. We just finished up, we're working on a USBC deal. The Bowling Congress, they brought 72,000 visitors to town and only tracked 16,000. So horse people, no different than conventioners or bowlers, know how to go to Travelocity, Expedia, the same game.
I think I'm on the $200,000. Yeah, I went back and I looked at the stuff that we've performed already and then kind of checked it off their attachment A. Have we priced out the items on here that they're still kind of on their wish list? Because I guess I'm a little vague on, if these items here would satisfy them and this hypothetically costs us, let's say, $200,000 overall, do we really need to commit ourselves to $200,000 each and every year? I mean, obviously, we need to put money into the Livestock Event Center, but, if this is their wish list that we need to do to keep them in Reno, what's the remaining items on this list going to cost? Because I don't think we really, looks like we kind of picked $200,000 out of the air.
No, if I could say, we do have a capital improvement plan that $200,000 doesn't touch the surface of. And these are what they sent to us a year ago. We have we have $500,000 in a new center scoreboard that needs to be replaced, another $500,000. Our seats are the same seats that you see behind you that have been there since 1985. They're terrible. We have we could do $1 million in parking lot resurfacing today and still have another million and another 300,000 in painting. If you've seen the Livestock Event Center and what used to be blue and now looks faded gray. You know, what they're wanting to see, I don't know if you're familiar with the facilities in Oklahoma City, Fort Worth, or at South Point. They're looking to see us maintain our facility and bring it up to a level where it's, you know, of a caliber to host a premier equine competition of this, like I say, of this caliber.
Another question, on this 175 to 200, is that gross revenue or net revenue?
That's gross.
So what's our cost?
Our cost, well, if you break it down, the Livestock Event Center cost us about $7,000 a day to operate.
It's what, a 10-day, 11-day
With
show?
a 14-day show, you got to count your move-ins and move-outs.
So 14.
So no, this is one of the few events we do have that actually makes money, or at least this and the rodeo. They either make money or cover their cost.
Does that include the security? The
Yes.
25,000?
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. Let me go one step further, though. It doesn't give us any credit for the room nights we're generating or the room tax. Nobody's saying, gee, you're generating 8,000 room nights. That's generating at this, and we don't apply that. We don't apply the fact that the 8,000 room nights, you know, creates compression in the marketplace, which drives the rates. I mean, we could load lots of factors into the operation of a public assembly facility. So as far as looking at what a true show, the profit and loss on a true show in one of our buildings, with the exception of our concert business, there's a lot of factors that go in.
Okay, and then, so we're going to pay, so we're obligating ourselves for years 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, correct, out of general funds?
Correct.
Have we played worst-case scenario that with obviously some challenges coming up with the opening of a major casino on November 5th, have we factored that into our numbers to say, what if our room tax numbers go down 10%? The other issue I don't think we've looked at is, you know, 14, 15, snaffle bit falls into September, right? So it's going to be the fiscal year 14, 15. I believe 15,
Correct.
we only have we have women's bowlers, but no men, correct?
Correct.
And then 15, 16, we only have men, correct?
Correct.
And
Yes,
then
sir.
16, 17, which is the last year, we have no bowling.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think there's some doubt there that there could be a potential loss of tax room dollars, and we're committing $200,000 to, you know, trackable room nights of 1,500 to 2,000, and, you know, if we're spending $7,000 a day for 14 days, we're kind of upside down. And
All
so
our buildings are upside down.
So I don't.
I mean,
I don't
you
think
want-
we've played worst case scenario. I think we're banking on the fact that we've got 200,000.
I would question that, Mr. Flynn, if I could, because with the exception of the recession years that we've experienced here, we have always been able to afford some level of capital improvements in our buildings. So to suggest that we're not able to afford $200,000, I think we would have to revert to a recession like what we experienced back in 08, 09 before we would not be able to afford that sort of a capital improvement. If we were out here saying $2 million a year, I'd be right there with you, but that's not what we're doing. $200,000 is not a major investment in that building.
Anything further? Mr. Kerrigan?
Thank you, Chairman. What's our capital improvement budget for this year?
This year, we had $100,000 at the Livestock Event Center. Is that what you're referring to specifically?
Yeah, and the point I'm trying to make is when you own buildings, okay, as an organization, you have to keep them up. For the year that I've been on this board, or 2 years, I think it's ridiculous the amount of money we put into capital improvement. And next year, when we do the budget, we're going to have to cut out some, because if you're going to own buildings, you have to maintain them. Otherwise, let's sell them. Okay, I've said that before with this organization. You know, we own a golf course, we own a convention center. Convention center, no problem with that. But a golf course, if you're going to own the rodeo grounds, I mean, you got to keep them up. And I don't think $200,000 a year is that much. But I can tell you, next year when we set the budget, if we don't cut some money out for capital improvement, it's going to kill us. Okay, I mean, every organization that I belong to that owns buildings and roads, you have to maintain them. So, and I don't think that, I mean, what's the RSCVA for? Room nights, isn't that? I keep hearing that, room nights, room nights. And if we're not going to generate the room nights by, you know, owning a building, let's get rid of it. That's my philosophy.
Thank you, Mr. Dorch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I mean, I think looking at this as $200,000 strictly for snaffle bit is the wrong way to look at this. I mean, this is for this facility, improvements that need to be made to this facility so that we can attract other business, and keep the other business that we have there. The fact that we're allocating it in this contract to snaffle bit is a creative way to get them to sign a 3-year deal. But the benefit of it is to benefit all of the groups that use that facility and potentially try to get other groups to use that facility in the future. And as Joe mentioned, I mean, I do believe that the city's going to step up and help. And maybe the RSC puts in $200,000, maybe the city puts in money on top of that, or maybe the city helps with the $200,000, depending on what we're trying to do there. I mean, I think the city recognizes we need to do improvements to that facility, and we're committed to doing what we need to do to make that a viable facility for all of our events and to attract new events. So I think to look at it as just associated with this one contract is really not the right way to look at it. I think we got to look at it as it's for that facility, and it's to benefit all of the events that happen there, and to try to attract other events there also.
Before we go to Ms. Carano, I think both councilmen are right. Councilman Kerrigan is correct. This is a contract driving this CIP improvements, but we need a long-term solution with a set aside in our funds. And Councilman Dorch is right on the points that he made. Both are saying solve the problem on a long-term basis. Ms. Carano.
Thank you, and I want to congratulate you on potentially getting this business for the next 3 years. Mr. Flynn and Dorch and Kerrigan's, they all have touched on what I've been thinking about, and actually I emailed Joe yesterday regarding this, but it's profit loss, and it's not going to pan out for this one event, but it's an annual or 3 years or going forward is what this facility can do for us. I think that maybe our demographics of the visitors that come, the horsey types, the equine types that come to this facility, if we could just give us a demographic where they're coming from, how much their annual spend, if an Asian and Chinese person is going to spend $7,000 on their entire visit to the United States, I would think that these people that I have seen over the years, they're going to spend a couple $1,000s while they're here in Reno. That will affect our economy, not just in room nights, not just with their horses and their storage, but the restaurants and the gaming and the gasoline and whatever else that comes along with bringing their horses to Reno. So I think that if we could support this building in a bowlers are going to spend less money. The equine people are going to spend more money in our area, not just at the event center. So anyway, that's my take, and thank you. I appreciate you going to bat for it.
Mr. Curtis.
I've enjoyed this discussion. Jerry, the thoughts I could see churning through your head are the same ones I've had as we've discussed many of these events. And
Hey, Paul, pull down your mic. Direct your mic more. There you go. Thank you.
Just call me Mike. The math is a little fuzzy, but as Cindy points out, there's other benefits, and I've come to understand this more and more on the room nights, and it's still tough to figure my first thing, is this a moneymaker or a money loser? You know, and that sort of goes through my head, but I don't think we'd be looking at it if the staff wasn't convinced that it was a moneymaker. And so I'm satisfied with that. The ongoing capital improvements, and we've talked about that rather extensively recently, And the way I see it, Joe, is that you've committed to spending $200,000 in ongoing capital improvements, and they provided a list. But I don't see that those two are linked. So if you were to spend $200,000, you may spend it on some of these things. You may not spend it on some of the things. And I'd turn to you to go ahead and decide what to spend it on. And I assume that's the way you're looking at it as well.
We do, Mr. Curtis, with their input.
With their
What their
input.
priorities are. You know, if it's snaffle specific, it's more relative to them. But if it's something that can help our facility and all our clients, marquees, restrooms, you know, sound system, then that's something we're a lot more amenable to.
Well, and we have a fairly extensive capital improvement or a reserve for replacement study and analysis that you prepare that identifies things that are going to have to be repaired. And as you point out, the parking lot and the paint and so on and so forth. So clearly you got to provide some, you know, I understand that you got to listen to them. But it's up to you, and the way you've structured it, it is up to you. And $200,000, we better come up with the money, because Mike Kerrigan is absolutely correct. If we have these facilities, we got to maintain them. So I think you did a good job.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I don't think I'm disagreeing with the fact that we need to put capital. I mean, we've been talking about that for a while now. But I think, you know, that's one component. I think the other component is I'm just still a little concerned that we've got a group of, we're thinking 1,500 to 2,000 tractable room nights. It could be as high as 8. I don't think we really know, but we're willing to spend the money on something that potentially is losing its business or losing its money. And I guess I just apply it to how I run things, and I would never take a group at a loss in hopes that, or guessing that they're profitable.
Before we go to Mr. Kerrigan, I want to ask, taking Ms. Carano's point, I'm not a marketer, but it sounds like this audience that come with $100,000 trailers and et cetera, they're more like a Barrett-Jackson crowd. We're going from, as to Barrett-Jackson, we're sort of going from mom and pop have a 56 Chevy they want to restore, and they come here every year, versus the Barrett-Jackson higher demographic dollar-wise. That seems to be important. Does that lead to, is this an important thing to get us back into the equestrian events, get us back on the map so that this facility can be used, and that in turn will lead to major impact capital improvements at the Livestock Event Center? Is that part of your theory?
Excuse me, if I understand your question, yes, sir, it is. The other thing, for us to lose snaffle bit futurity in the equine world is comparable to us losing safari to our convention center. And in the equine world, especially on the West Coast, it's comparable. And if we're going to maintain a presence or a position within that market segment, we need to retain premier shows like Snafflebit, and we do need to maintain, or we do need to make capital improvements to the Livestock Event Center.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kerrigan, then Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, I guess my perception is that this organization is not a for-profit organization. I mean, I think, let's talk about Safari Club, let's talk about Barrett-Jackson. How much did we lose on both of those as far as what we've given away? Because I think this organization makes its money on room tax, is that not correct? So if we have to, I mean, am I not correct in saying that when Safari was here, we lost a lot of money? I mean, in other words, we put a lot of money into that.
Safari was definitely a loss for us. Barrett-Jackson, I think, is a much more profitable operation for us. But yeah, Safari Club costs us roughly $250,000 every time they were here.
Yeah, and I have no problem with that, because I think, it's all about the room nights, because that's where you get our revenue. I mean, that's where we get our revenue as an organization. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the 3-year contract extension.
Second. Well, wait a second. Mr. Flynn wished to speak.
Just to the point about the profile of the group, we have participated in Snafflebit before, and I think the mindset was that we have a lot of acreage for those high-end trailers, and after 1 year, we saw no increase in revenues to support. It is a sponsorship event, and we saw no increases in revenue.
Thank you. Is there any other debate, now debate on the motion? Mr. Go ahead.
No debate,
Talk.
just a comment.
Okay.
I don't want my questions to be perceived as negative. They're exploratory to get answers, which is why I ask them. We got answers for the most part, and I'm trying to ascertain return on investment. Yeah, we all agree we need to improve and maintain the properties we hold. So, I mean, I see improvement in properties, good, and I'm not trying to be negative with my questions. I'm trying to get information, so.
Don't need to apologize. You're just being a good board member. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any additional direct discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes. That passes with one negative vote. Was that Mr. Flynn? One, correct? One negative. Okay. Thank you very much. Then anything else on this item? No, you don't want anything else in this item. Okay. That would take us to items for future board meetings. I got one. This is fun. December meeting. It's always a fun thing. Charlotte and management proposed December 5th, but that corresponds with the Governor's Tourism Council, which a lot of folks around the table will be participants in. That don't work. What do you want to do for December meeting? Charlotte, do you have some other potential dates? Mr. Kerrigan.
You know, because it is a Christmas, I've already got 3 of my meetings that are now trying to get changed. And so now it's into the part where we're herding cats again. And so unless we have something really, really important, is there a reason why we have to have a meeting in December?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
We invite our emeritus, our alumni back. And it's a big deal for them, Mike. It is. I talked to some of those folks. It is a big deal for those guys and gals to come back.
Well, when is our meeting? What's the date does it fall on?
Thursday, the 5th is the date that's in conflict with the Governor's Conference on Tourism.
No, I mean, when is the regular date of the meeting in November, or in December? Yeah, what would that date be? I don't have a calendar. What's that? Okay, what's wrong with that? What's wrong? I mean, why are we changing it? That's my question.
Might have difficulty achieving a quorum based on Christmas travel plans.
Okay, well.
I think that Thursday, the 12th, would split the difference. It would be a week later than we had originally looked at, a week before the typically scheduled board meeting. And I think probably most people will not be on their Christmas break at that point. So I think that would probably be our recommendation.
We also don't have a November board meeting, so we have the December meeting early to kind of like push the November meeting out further to cover November and December.
So a quorum at December is rendered unimportant. It's more social. No? I'd be wrong in that?
Normally, we do have a regular board
Okay.
meeting
All right.
before the luncheon.
It's light.
And I believe, actually, we may have the NRA appointment as business to be taken care of in December as well, or at that board meeting.
Ma'am, do you have enough information that has been presented here to do some
12th?
polling, or do you wish to set a date?
We'd recommend December 12th, the following Thursday.
Everybody good with that? Is a majority good with that? Okay, 12th. It'll be fun. Yes,
And
ma'am.
also, just to clarify, we will probably start the meeting an hour later, so it'll probably start at 10 to accommodate the luncheon immediately following. So the 12th at 10.
That sounds great. Great. Okay. Very good. Any other items for future board meetings? Anyone? Ms. Carano?
I just wanted to, before we close, ask everyone that is going to the Governor's Conference on Tourism to think about the dinner that the Nevada Hotel Lodging Association is having. We're going through a restructuring of Nevada Hotel Lodging Association. Anyways, so if maybe we could all get involved and maybe have a northern appearance and maybe get going back into that organization in the north.
Thank you very much. Any other items for future board meetings? All right, let's move on to board member comments. No problem, no problem. No board member comments. Let us go to concluding public comment. Do you have any? All right. Is there, there's a motion, second. No debate on that. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. We be adjourned.